we weren't notified or nobody knew anything about this thing until it was over the skies of Montana. What kind of cooperation do we have with Canadian military and Canadian radar or anything else going up in Canada that they don't say, hey, guys, listen, there's a balloon up there with a big giant contraption on it, 3 times the size of a city bus, and it's heading your way. Where was now? Listen, I don't ever want to. Certain things you don't let the public know because you don't want to have a lot of people yelling and screaming and crying and everything else like that. But when we've gone through the last 2 years, and you're telling everybody, oh, by the way, there's a big giant balloon flying overhead, and we're just gonna let it go. You could have any number of things equipped on that balloon.
Well, that's what they were used for first.
Right. In 1945, there were 7 school children killed in California when the Japanese, in the beginning of 1945, dropped munitions from a hot air balloon of an altitude of about 30,000 feet and blew up in a small residential area, killing a group of school children, and I believe 1 or 2 adults along with them.
The easy answer here, Frank, is this was never intended to get to be big news. Yes, I absolutely guarantee you that we knew it from the Alaska stations, and Canada knew about this. We've probably been tracking this all the way through, and they just didn't think anyone would notice. And they were just not telling people because they didn't want them to notice, ask questions, or demand any action. And they would, if the news media didn't pick it up, if the public didn't pick it up with social media and spread it around, then this would have just gone on by and they'd have ignored it. But now they have to have a reaction. And the reaction is they want to downplay it as much as possible because otherwise it requires leadership to make a decisive decision, which will have consequences which they don't understand. We know that from their actions in Afghanistan, Ukraine, including ongoing, Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea in reaction to North Korea and China. And Iran, most recently. They have no clue. And they don't want anyone to notice that. So the easiest way is not to respond.
This is the trial balloon. This is if we can't detect a 200-foot round object flying over our skies and it doesn't cause any concern, how many smaller objects are they letting loose into our atmosphere?
It comes down to, this is a matter of leadership. Everything that's been happening over the last 2 years with the lack of foreign policy is a test of our administration's leadership. And every time that we fail to see a decisive leadership with a plan that understands the consequences, we see a further escalation around the world that destabilizes peace. These nations are, you're right, it's a trial balloon. Is there any decisive leadership at any level, or are they playing politics still? Oh, they're still playing politics. They're still trying to talk it down, say it's nothing. We can go to the next stage. We can go to the next level because they will do nothing. This is why we have the world as close to World War III or 3 region wars, as I believe. And in the lack of leadership, you will see rogue nations and nations that do not believe in the United States, Europe, or in Israel, and they will get hyperactive and start killing people, which is what we have seen. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Mark Milley, the general, who I believe is a traitor and should be tried on treason, they are complicit in increasing the amount of violence and death and terrorism around the world.
Pick a hill, man. There's 100 hills out there.
Well, in part, it's because they've trained the youth for generations now. They've been pushing it's called the Overton window. It's basically where the center of the nation is, the moral center, the understanding of the average person. They've been shifting it more and more to the left over and over on the screen here. It's leftwards, right? So that the things that we're doing today are things that you couldn't do 5, 10, 15, God forbid you go back 20 years or more, and to normalize them, which is why today we have people like MAPS. What is it? It's minor attracted people, otherwise known as pedophiles. And that's they're trying to normalize that. Now, the reason why we're seeing so many of these things hit all at once is partially because of confusion, partially because they're pushing every front they can to as far to the left as they can. And most people only have one or two things that they're paying attention to intensely, whether it be guns or abortion or taxes or whatever it is your thing is. Most people are only following one, maybe two things. And so they're not noticing the others. They're trying to see what they can get past and normalize it. So by the time you start paying attention, it's commonplace. And they're trying to push everything as far so that when people do start pushing back, because the majority of Americans, or well over 40% of Americans, actually about 62%, don't react to anything, no matter how extreme it is. And so it's once you get to that limit where the majority, that silent majority, 40% of Americans who are neither Democrat nor Republican or libertarian or anything else, the independents, when they start reacting, now you know you've hit that line. But you pushed it so far that when they pull back, we're still further to the left. We've gone further into this socialist ideology, this progressive ideology, than we started at. And that's what they're doing here. So they're trying to do that on multiple fronts all at the same time. I understand the politics of it. I understand the ideology of it. And what people aren't noticing is the consequence of that, because the next generation gets trained that this is all normal. This is the way it's supposed to be.
And that gets back to the whole point of why everything that's gone on, especially in the last 20 years, is to bring this country to its knees.
But it's more than 20 years.
I'd buy 44 Magnum. Oh, we need a pistol. No, it's for my lever action. 45 long coat. No, it's for my lever action. Everything. The only thing I couldn't convince them was wasn't for a handgun. Would have been 300 Win Mag, and that's because I don't own a 300 Win Mag handgun. Nobody makes one, sadly, yet. I'm working on it.
I get where they're doing. Ultimately, in each of these cases, they are looking at ways to get around the Second Amendment so they can get it past the Supreme Court. And the ultimate goal in every single case when it comes to these firearms is they're looking to chill the Second Amendment, to disarm the American people, and to make sure that people are going to comply as the government overreaches its power. And again, this isn't about you and me. It isn't anyone our age range. This is for the kids who are 5, 10, 15, who are growing up with this, and they will think this is normal. It is normalizing the chilling of our rights and our freedoms, the very reason why we have millions of people trying to come into this country, and why we have 600,000 people as of today, according to NBC News, 600,000 people running around this nation that are illegal. We know they're illegal, and they're running around the nation without any date or any check on where these people are or what they are doing. It is a systematic devolving of the nation, disrupting it and breaking it down as a means of control and power. And that's terrifying. Now, a lot of people go, Mike, what do you mean? They were just protesting. No, this was domestic terrorism. This was purposeful and intentional. And this is how they silence people as they get to having fewer and fewer people who are armed, or at least the wrong people who are armed. They're terrifying our neighbors. They're going to our neighborhoods and they're terrifying people. And they're using the justification of anything that happens that matches their message to do this. So they don't like police and they want to defund the police. How do you justify it now after all the rioting, after all the billions of dollars of damage to cities across this nation, where poor people have been left without homes and without jobs? And everyone has now seen the consequence of that. How do you get those people back on your side? How do you continue this movement? You terrorize them. What happened in Binghamton, New York is an example of that terrorism. Progressive Leaders Tomorrow, for those who do not know, they go by the name of Plot, is a more radical leftist offshoot of BLM. They're about half a step away from being Antifa, and it is alleged that some of their members are part of the local Antifa